All right, so today's Friday, April 9th. Yesterday, Tom went over creating a Django API. He talked about serializers, basically the idea of creating JSON data so that you could kind of transfer it between applications and languages, and then it could be packaged and unpackaged from your API. So yeah, we're going to kind of go over that again with our school API. So hopefully you guys were able to tackle that challenge yesterday. If not, definitely we'll go over that and make sure you understand kind of the process of creating an API. I think an added challenge for the school API was that we had two models and not just one, and the models interacted with one another. So that might have been an extra layer that you guys might have had to research to figure out. But yeah, let's go over that. So bringing up the school API, let's just go through our normal motions. So you're going to fork it. Let's do its thing. That should be ready in a few seconds. All right, got it. Gonna copy the URL, go to my challenges. Let that come down there. Okay, so I've cloned that down. Let me get into that directory. So that'll be cd school API. Okay, and then let's bring up the coding window. Okay, let me just move this over there, I guess. So I'm going to go through these steps quickly because we've done it a few times. I'm going to create a new Django project. So hopefully you guys are pros at that by now. So first thing I'm going to do is create a virtual environment. So it's going to be Python-m. We'll do VNV. I'll name mine _virtual. That'll get created. So notice a virtual folder got created. I'm going to source that. So I actually get into my virtual environment. So it'll be _virtual/bin/activate. All right, great. I'm in my virtual environment now. Notice my terminal shows the virtual environment listed there. All right, so that's done. Next step, let me brighten my screen there. Next step will be to install a few items. So I'm going to install Django with pip install Django. That shouldn't take too long. All right, that's done. And also, since I know I'm going to use Postgres, I'm just going to install pip install psych pg. All right, that's all done. All right, so I've got my system with all the libraries I need. Now I'm actually going to set up a Django project. So if you guys remember, that's Django-admin, start project, and then I'm going to give a project name. So I'm going to name mine school API. And I'll create it locally, so I don't want that nested folder. So that's why I put that period there. All right, so I got my school API folder. So this is going to be my project. I guess my app might want to be named school API. So yeah, let me rename that. Let me delete it, and I'll call that school project. Just no, that's my project folder. Gotta delete this. All right, so school project is my project folder, and now I'm going to create my app. So it's going to be Python manage.py, and then I'll name my app school API. Start app. That's what I forgot. Okay, so I got my app folder, which is school API, and my project folder, which is school project. I'm going to go into my project folder, go to my settings. You guys remember, you got to add your app to your listed apps. So mine is called school API. Also, I'm going to be using Postgres. So I'm going to change my database to PostgreSQL. And then I got to give a database name. So that's something else I could do in my terminal. I'm going to create a database. Let's call it school API. Hopefully I don't have a database with that name. I do. Let's drop that database then. And create it again. So create DB school API. All right, great. That got created. And then I'm going to put that name into my settings file, school API. All right, a few more steps that we typically want to do. So in school projects, I'm going to go to my URLs and add in a location for, let's call it school API, and my include here, so that I can do here, include, what is it, school API dot URLs. Okay, so that should be good. I don't have typos. All right, include, I include that here. All right, so then I'm gonna go to my app folder and create a URLs file, because that's something we have to create, urls.py. And then I'll copy what I have here. And here, we don't need admin here. We'll call this views.index, I guess, and give it a name of, I don't know what I want to give a name of, so we'll do that later. From views, sorry, from school API, import views, and then our view should contain the handlers for that. So I'll create an index, and I'll have no functionality right now. All right, so that should be what I need. All right, so my URLs are set up. Views doesn't have anything meaningful in it. Next thing I want to do is create my models. So I'm going to go to my models py in my app folder. Now let's go back to the README, because I don't think I really inspected that. So release 0 is set up a new Django project. So that's kind of what we did. By now, we should be familiar with that. This project we eventually deployed to Heroku. So you need to use Postgres as your database. We've done that. Yep, so I think we're done with release 0. We went through all those steps again kind of quickly, but hopefully you guys have done this enough where none of that was a surprise. All right, so I would say we completed release 0. Let's move on to release 1. So we want to create a student's object. So we need to create a model for it, and then we want to add some functionality. So it says we need to be able to create new students, read all students in the school, read data, update student records, and delete a student. Okay, and we can test this via Postman if you want to. So yeah, let's create some a student model. So I'm going to do students from models.model. Let's give it some fields. So I'm going to say name. Again, I'm just going to condense that into one field. I know we sometimes break it up into first name, last name, but I'm not feeling up for that. So we'll do models.model, sorry, char field. We'll give it a max length because that's required. Max length, let's just say 128, 64 sounds good to me. What else do we want here? Let's just have a fun fact about our students. So that'll be a char field also. And this would be 6. What else would we have for a student? We could have maybe a grade that they're in. So we'll make that just an integer value. And okay, I'm not sure what else I want in there, so I think that'll be good for now. If we do want to change our models, again, usually it's good to kind of make sure your models are set and won't change going forward, but I don't think there's too much else I would want for the student at this point. So I'm just going to leave it as that. We'll update it as needed. All right, so I created my model. The next step I want to do is make migrations. So I'm going to do that via Python manage py make migrations. That'll do its thing, and then I eventually want to migrate. So let's do Python manage py and migrate. Not Python py. All right, there we go. So it put the default user stuff into the database, and then also my additional model that I created. All right, so I think we're off to a good start. Let's see what else we need to do. So we need the ability to do basic CRUD operations. That's create, read, update, and delete. So let's kind of implement that. I can go back to my URLs, if I can find those right here. And let's give it some actual routes. So let's say students will be our base route here. And let's call that student list. And then let's give a few more routes here. So basic CRUD operations, we'll do new, which will create a new student. So that'll be student new. I'm just gonna name this with underscores, if that's allowed. All right, so that's creating a new student. Next, we'll probably want to view a student detail. So we'll do student ID, and that'll be student detail. And then we can also, what else can we do? We can update students. And finally, we should be able to delete a student from our records. Maybe they get expelled, maybe they graduate, we don't really know. All right, a lot of repetitive work. We've probably done this again with any of the objects we create. We've done CRUD functionality, so this all should be second nature to you guys, but we have our general routes laid out here. Okay, so we need to create the views for them. So I've defined, I guess, 5 of them. So
Ankur, do you want to change your path for update, the views.student? Yeah, right there.
Thank you. Yep, copy and pasting can definitely get you. All right, I think those should be correct. Hopefully, if not, we'll run into errors later. We'll deal with it. Okay, let's go to our views now. I have students new, detail, update, delete. So let's create a bunch of these stubbed out, which just means there's no functionality. Students, did I name it? Index. All right, let me change this to student list just to match my naming. So views was student list. Copy that. All right, so we had new, we had update, delete, and detail. Okay, I think those are the 5. Let's just double check our naming. So student detail, nothing plural. I think that's right. All right, so those should be good. Let's actually get our server going because our server can tell us if we have errors while we're going. So I think we should be able to kick that off. So let's do Python manage.py run server. All right, looks like there's no errors as of now. All right, so we actually want to give these controllers actual functionality. So let's start with student list. So again, this is an API, so we're going to want to create serializers. So maybe that's something we should do before we try to implement these. So serializers, again, the idea here is to take Python objects and create them into I guess a universal format. In this case, we use JSON, so that we can actually serve it up to whoever's requesting the data, and they can unpackage the JSON and convert it to whatever objects they need in their particular language or whatever technology they're using. So that's the whole point of serializers. Let's actually create some. I'm going to create a new file called serializers.py, and that's where we'll put our good details. All right, so I guess this is the newest stuff that we kind of talked about yesterday. So we'll kind of walk through it, but not too much to it. We just want to make sure we get the appropriate format. So I'm going to import from built-ins, import objects. And I think there was a question yesterday about what exactly object is. Again, I've never really thought too much about it, but I actually dove into it. So you could do Control-click and go to definition, and it'll show you kind of what it is. And from my just kind of glancing at it, I think it just gives you the base methods. Like, you know, we have init, we have str. So basically, this is basically, I think, the lowest object that you can have that probably everything derives from, so that you could have this functionality or override it as needed. But yeah, again, I haven't paid too much attention to the object. It's just something that exists, and then we use it. So let's use it. I'm going to call it class student serializer. I actually just installed the plugin that Jose was repping for spell check, so hopefully that'll reduce my typos overall. I know I've had some silly typos that have plagued my code. All right, so we're gonna derive from objects. So the serializer object will be our derived class. In here, we're gonna write some methods. So I'm gonna do something maybe a little slightly different than how we did it yesterday, but again, the ultimate goal is the same, is that we want to write out JSON formatted objects. So in this case, I'm just gonna define a method called, let's say, get all. And this will actually take in students. So I think yesterday we went with like the property. So we passed in the data into the init method, and then we made properties where we can call like serialize all and serialize or something to that nature. But I'm just gonna actually create methods that take in data. Again, just a different way to do the same exact thing. All right, so get all will serialize all students. So let's see, we want serialized students, I guess. And I assume we're going to have a list of them. So, okay. Then for each student that we have, we want to serialize them. I'm actually going to pass right now. And we'll return students, serialized students. All right, so basically go through all the students, do something, and then return serialized students, which is our dictionary here. And that should be a comma, sorry. Okay, so I'm actually going to implement my other method and call that, let's call it get. And that'll just take in self, which is the magic keyword for each instance method. And this will take in one particular student. And this will return, let's see, serialized students. Thank you, spell check. This will just be a dictionary. And I think we had, what do we have in here? We had name. Name. We had fun facts about the students. So that was student fun facts. And what else? They had grade. We probably would want to add some validation to grade. Like obviously the grade should be 0 through 12, or I guess 1 through 12. I don't know if we want 0 to equal kindergarten. But anyway, again, we probably want some validation on that somewhere. But for now, I'm just going to forgo that. So we have grade. I guess we could also have an ID that we show. So let's do student.id. And OK, I think that's all the information that we're going to expose. And now the reason I passed up here is because I actually want to just take advantage of this get method, right? Kind of want to reduce code redundancy. So in this case, I'll just call that get method. So for that, I'll do serialize students and reference that field here. So students, and we want to append to it. And the appending will just be self.get students. All right, so again, obviously, if we make a change to our get method, that will automatically be adopted by our get all method. So for example, if we wanted to add a new field here, whatever, then our other serializer will automatically adopt those changes rather than having two different locations where we have to update two different fields, or the fields that we're including. So that's kind of why I went with this design. So get all will be passed in all students, and then get will just take one particular student and return. I forgot to return here. Serialized. Put a D on there because they're past tense. Okay, I think that should take care of my serializer. Again, we're just going to take in a Python object and convert it to a JSON format. Any questions so far? Definitely don't want to rush over anything. All right, you guys good? All right, so now we actually want to use this serializer in our views. So let's do that here. We're going to, let's see, return. What do we want to return? So return, let's see, we have student. Let's import what we just wanted. So from school API dot serializers import student serializer. And then let's see, we want to return some serialized objects. I'm trying to remember how to do this. So first we want to get the query set. So student for our model from school API models import student. Students will equal student.objects.all. All right, so that's our Python object. We want to create, let's call it serialized. I don't like typing this out, but that's what I want with. So serialized students will equal my student serializer. Again, I'm not passing anything into the init method, so that's going to be empty parentheses, but I'm going to call get all, and then pass in my students. All right, cool. And then since we get serialized students back, is there a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question, and this might have been covered yesterday. I just kind of wanted to make sure. So, for the serialized students, when you use the serializer, is it supposed to do exactly what your query set is doing, basically, like above? Like,
Not quite. So query set is actually getting the records from the database and giving this query set object, and then I'm passing that query set object, and we're just basically converting it. So maybe get is not the right word here. Maybe it should be like convert all, but basically it's going to convert it to a JSON object. So that's basically just like it looks like a dictionary, but everything's just like has proper, I guess, formatting.
got it. Thank you.
So yeah, get all will convert it to something that we could pass as a JSON object. And finally, we want to pass a JSON response. So I think that's something I need to import. So from Django, I think it's, yeah, import JSON response. And then we want to return a JSON response. So JSON response has fields in it. I think it's data equals serialized students. And then is there a status? Is that right? I think that should be right. Okay, so we're returning a status code and the data. And I think this needs to be put into, no, that should be fine. Okay, so that's our student list.
Encore, what is that status code? I know that we're putting it in, but I'm not really clear on what its function is.
Sure, so that's just like, that's mirroring, or that's supposed to represent the HTTP status code. So in this case, 200 just means A-OK. Again, the status code is like if you're in the 400s, that means a bad request. 300s, I think, are redirects.
So we're just telling it to do that, that's what we want the response to be from the HTTP.
Yeah, we're just passing, like whoever calls this will inspect the status and can know that everything went okay.
And if we don't put that, what kind of effects like would it have?
That's a good question. We could try without it and see if, it should work fine, I think. I don't know if this is a mandatory field or not, but we could always experiment. So when we get to testing it with Postman, we could see if we drop that off and see what happens. Student new. So this will be where we create new students. So I think one tag we want to use is CSRF exempt. So we don't need to specify a CSRF token each time we're making calls for testing this.
You have to import the CSRF.
Yep. Yeah, I always forget about imports. So where's that located? From Django, the decorators. No. Views.decorators.
In the chat, I put what I had on mine.
Thanks. Import CSRF. Yeah, I always forget all the paths for this, but All right, so that's where we're getting that CSRF exempt decorator that we can use for our student new, student update, and student delete. I'm actually going to swap the orders of this just so my student detail can be separated from these exempt methods. So pass and student detail will be up here. So let's actually do student detail. That's a little simpler. Very similar to our student list, except we are passed in a student ID. So let's take our code, copy it, and change it a little bit. So we want to do all.get, get, and pk equals student ID. All right, one thing that might be good is to have a try catch here, because let's say they make a request for a student ID that doesn't exist. We probably should handle it more elegantly. If we actually do this and the student ID doesn't exist, I think Django throws an error, and then the error is a little less, I guess, nice to the user. So I'm just gonna copy this, and let's just return a message saying something to the user so they know something went wrong. So let's say, give them a status back. Again, we put anything here. Status will be student not found. All right, so again, this will be returned to the user so they get something useful knowing, hey, maybe they made a bad request. We still want to return something. So in this case, we'll say 404, indicating it's a bad response. Okay, so JSON response, this should be converted to students. So it's a student, and get, and that's student singular. All right, so pretty similar code here. We're getting students all. In this case, we're getting a particular student based on the student ID that's passed in by the route. Okay, so always good to incrementally test. So instead of implementing these other methods, I kind of want to make sure I'm actually getting something useful out of here. So I'm going to test that. However, I have an error here. What did I screw up? JSON response.
You don't have a closing bracket.
Oh yeah, close.
Yes. Good eyes. All right. So I think that should take care of it. My server happy. My server is happy. So let's actually test this with Postman. So my server is running already. You can also debug this. So I'm actually going to go through that. I know I do this often, but I kind of love going through VS debugger. So I'm actually going to close this and run this through my debugger. So if you guys remember the steps, go to your debug tab, create a launch.json file. I'm going to select Python file. Here I'm going to make some changes. Usually I don't, but in this case, instead of selecting the current file, I always want to launch manage.py. So I'm going to put that into my program. And then my name, this is just for whatever, for display purposes. So I'll say launch manage.py. And I need one more argument here. So for args, I'm going to add in an argument of run server, because that's how we actually launch our server via manage.py. All right, so my args plural, sorry, is run server, and then I changed my program to be manage.py. So therefore, I could pretty much be on any file and still run my debugger. Previously, if it was current file, I actually had to open the manage.py file and then run that. A little less convenient. So in this case, setting that launch JSON up. Now I'm just going to go to my run menu, hit debug, and hopefully my server should still launch. Doing some things. Okay, yep, we got the same output as we expect for a functional server. So that's running. So if we want to debug, we could add breakpoints. Right now, I don't think I want to breakpoint on anything. So let's just kind of test this. So I have Postman up here. Let's create some requests. I'm going to create a new collection. We'll call that, how do I rename it? Rename. Let's call it school API. All right, and in this collection, I'll create a bunch of requests. So let's go with let me delete the ones that I was testing with before. Okay, so here I want to add a request. This will be a GET request. So this is where I want to get, let's say all students, say list all students will be the name of this, and this will be a simple GET request. I just need to pass it the URL. So my server is running on port 8000, verify, and that's on localhost. So should be able to just call localhost. Let's see, let me double check how I do that here. All right, so we need HTTP localhost. HTTP localhost. Need 2 slashes. Port is 8000. Then my URL, I believe I set it to students, and I think that's my base. Let's actually try it. I forget that's my actual URL, so I'm going to save that. And now my request has been saved. Let's hit send. All right, we got an error because page not found. Let's check our URLs. Let me actually try this in a browser. But should get the same thing. All right, got my Chrome up here, not here. Okay. All right, so if I go here, okay, I named it School API, not Students. My bad. So it's going to be Students after that. Okay, got that. So School API / students. Okay, so we got something. Again, we could just do it in our browser because we're doing GET request, but we might as well use Postman. So I'm going to save that in here. So add school _ API / students. Save this, do that. Okay, we get the same expected output, which is just an empty list of students because we haven't added any students to our school yet. Let's add another request. I'm going to create a new request here. And this will be student detail. And that will be a similar path. So I'm going to go back here, copy this. And then we're eventually going to have a student with ID 1. So if I do this right now, obviously the student doesn't exist. But we actually added that error handling case, if you guys remember. So just go back to that. We checked if the student did not exist, this will throw an exception and we'll return, we'll catch it with our except block and return student not found. So this will be nicer than just having a Django error returned to us. So let's try that. All right, notice we got a response back, so that's good. It's informational, so student not found. So that's because we haven't created any students in our school yet. All right, so it sounds like the next step we want to do. We test that, it seems to be working. Let's actually create a student so that we could get student details. So that's our next method that we'll do. Going to my views. We want to be able to create a new student. Right, so how will we go about doing that? So this is where we want to use our form, but we haven't created forms. So let's create a forms file, forms.py. Forms, not a whole lot of work to it, especially when we use Django model forms. So Django.forms, import model form. There you are. And then we also want to import our model. So that's school models, import student. And this is probably like a 3-line thing if I remember. So class student form, we're going to inherit from model form. And then this needs a nested class of meta. We pass it to model, which is student, and then we pass it some fields. That's how we want it. Pick fields, and then whatever fields we want to expose. So let's say name, fun fact, and grade. All right, we don't need to expose the ID in our form. Like the ID will be auto-generated. So these 3 items should be good enough. Let's save that. Go to our views and user form here. A lot of imports. So school API.forms, import student form. As I'm kind of typing this up, any questions so far, either about the student list, student detail, the serializers we created, or what we're doing now? Not model, student model, student form. Okay, so we have a student form. Now we could actually use that for validation purposes. right, so they're going to be posting to this route. We could ignore this. Let's just stop our server. Views. All right, student new. Let's create a new student. All right, so this is gonna take in nothing, take a request. We're going to check if our request is a post. Post. If so, let's process it. We could return an error case if we don't try to post it here, but I'm not gonna worry about that. So let's see. I'm gonna do data equals json.load. All right, so I'm using some stuff that I haven't imported, so import JSON is what I want to do. This makes it easier to work with JSON, so we'll load the request. So JSON load request, I believe. And yeah, so we get our data, and then we want to use our data. So form would be student form. And that will take in our data, and then in this case, we don't have an instance we're working with. This is a new student, so that should be good enough. And then we want to check if the form is valid. So if all the fields that were passed to us in our request were valid, then we should be able to save it to our database. So if form valid, we want to save our form. All right, so save should commit to the database. I believe the default value is commit. All right, form.save. In the event that form is not valid, let's return something to our user. So we can return JSON response saying, let's just copy this. Status will be students has invalid fields. Okay, so if we save, we want to return something also. We just want to return the student back to our user. So let's see, instance of that. And then this would be, what should we return in this case? I guess just the student that was saved. So in this case, instant will be student. And data will be, let's break this up in multiple steps. So serialized student will be, we'll use our serializer again. So let me just copy what I had before. Student serializer dot get, and that'll be our data. Oh, thank you, spell check. Okay, so the status should be 200 in that case. All right, so if they pass this data, again, this data is just going to be whatever they fill out in the form. So the form's not going to contain everything that the student will have. Like, they're not going to specify the student's ID because that's something that's generated when you save. So we can't just return the data that they passed us. The data is not going to mirror the exact student record. But we save it, and then once we save it, we will serialize it and pass it back to the response. Okay, so let's actually try this out. Always good to incrementally test. Obviously, I could have made a mistake here. So this should be a post. We get the request, convert it, get the data. Okay, let's see if this works. If it doesn't, we can always break in here. So let's run my debugger. Actually, I will add a breakpoint just to investigate some values. So I put a breakpoint right after we get our data to kind of see what that looks like. Going back to Postman, it's going to create a new, new request. We'll call this a post. So not a get, but a post. And this will actually go to, say this one. This will be student/new. All right, and then we want to pass some values. So there's a few ways we could do it. We do it in a table, or a body will have a table form data. So let's do a name. What else do we have? Fun fact and grade. they're in. Values to name, let's say Minnie Mouse. It's a fun fact about Minnie Mouse. I don't know my Disney trivia. Does anyone know a fun fact about Minnie Mouse? All right, guess she's married to Mickey. I don't think they got a divorce. Grade, let's say she's in 8th grade right now. So this is a younger Minnie Mouse. I don't know why she's married in 8th grade. Let's just say dating Mickey. I don't know when they actually met. I'm sure there's a backstory to all the Disney characters. Let's say she was dating Mickey in 8th grade. All right, so we
Isn't her cat's name Felix?
I actually did not know that. Let's add that fact. Maybe they weren't dating.
Or it's either Felix or Figaro or something like that.
Cat's name, I'm gonna trust you, it's Felix. If this is wrong, it's on you, Jeremy. All right, cat's name is Felix, grade 8. All right, that sounds like enough information. So that's our form data. Let's try sending this. So we're posting it to our student/new, and then we should, if everything is formatted correctly here, maybe I made a mistake, maybe I'm missing something, let's actually send it. Okay, I got an error, that's not good. Student/new, do I need a slash here? Nope. Page not found. So my routes are student new. Oh, what did I do wrong here? So I had new. School API /new. Okay, so I got
It was Figaro, sorry.
Gotcha. I got a JSON decoding error. That's not what I expected. So something went astray. All right, so we didn't have a breakpoint, so we didn't get this far. So something went wrong. Where are we going here? I guess loading the request is what failed. Did I do that not in the way I wanted? Let's actually take a look at our request. I don't think there's anything too exciting there. Try sending it again. All right, so we hit our breakpoint. Our request looked like this. That JSON load is what I wanted, but maybe I'm mistaken.
If you go back to the other application, I forget what it's called, Postinger.
Postman?
Yeah, and then if you just change it from form data to raw, and then choose JSON, it should work.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's how I did before, but I thought the form data would convert it, but I guess I was wrong. So let's just write it ourselves. Thank you for that suggestion. So we had name was Minnie Mouse. I guess this gives us a chance to correct the cat's name. So mouse, we had fun facts. Has cat's name Figaro. How do you spell Figaro? F-I-G? That is not right, is it?
I think it's Figaro.
Oh, okay, I wasn't too off then. Grade, she's in 8th grade at whatever point in time. All right, so that's our data. Now this is JSON. So I guess form data is going to be packaged differently. I didn't quite realize that, but I guess I should continue here. Sure. Okay, so let's try sending this. So this is actual JSON data. I guess I was sending non-JSON data before, so apologies there. Let's send that. All right, we hit our breakpoint. Let's see if we can proceed. Yep, we passed that line. Let's look at our data. Our data looks like JSON information with some additional stuff. I don't know what that all is all about. All right, so we got past our breakpoints. I don't think there's anything too interesting we want to see here. Hopefully form is valid. Let's try getting through that. All right, form was valid. So all the validations went through, as in like we got an integer for an integer field. If that wasn't an integer, I assume form is valid would fail. So we could maybe try that. But yeah, I think everything's going to go splendidly. So I'm just going to continue and our application will go. Notice that we got that post down here. So we got a 200 and yep. So we got that back as a response. We got ID 1. So we know this is our first student. We have Minnie Mouse, fun fact. Everything seems to be appropriate. Let's try sending creating a student with a bad field. So let's say grade and let's make that F. I actually don't know if this will fail or not. So why is that underlined? I don't know. Does that actually tell me?
I think you need to put it in quotes.
Right. All right, so I have F. I don't know if this is actually going to fail, but let's try it out. let's actually change the details in case, whatever. Let's make this Mickey Mouse has a dog named Pluto. Okay, let's send that. All right, notice we got a response back, which is great. But the response says student has invalid fields. And that the reason is because we passed a non-integer value. And that's what is valid is checking when we call it on the form. So let's actually correct that. Let's say Mickey was in 9th grade. I don't know the age discrepancy between Mickey and Minnie, but maybe they're grade apart. So let's hit send. All right, great, that worked. We got ID 2. So now we have some students. I do want to test my student detail because I didn't have a student before. So if we go to student/1, that should return Minnie, hopefully. And there we go. We got the record for Minnie. ID 1, name Minnie Mouse, has cat named Figaro, and grade 8. Okay, so it seems like that's working correctly. Let's kind of power through our student update. It should be very similar to our student new. So I'm actually going to copy that and modify it. And if you guys are thinking what I'm maybe thinking is this is going to be duplicate code, so it might make sense to condense it. That's definitely something I hope you guys are thinking. But for now, I'm just going to get this working, and then we can think about code cleanup should we have the time for it. So in this case, we do have an instance. So we have a student ID passed to us when we're updating. So we want to get that student ID. So let's say instance equals student dot objects dot get pk equals student ID. And like we did above, we might want to check if with a try except. So let's just wrap this whole thing into a try except. The bad part about putting this all in try except is we don't actually know what fails. Like again, the JSON data could fail, maybe the student form somehow fails, but in this case, we'll just keep it simple. Let's say bad request. Keep it generic. Okay, so we have an instance. We want to pass that instance to our form. So maybe we should do that above here. Oh, I lost it. All right, so we grab our instance. We can pass that into the form. Again, the form has an instance, optional instance parameter that you can pass in. So instance will be instance. Maybe my naming's not the best there, so we'll do students. That's going to conflict with the name I have here, but I'm not going to worry about that. We could overwrite what we had before. So, all right, we have our student. That's our instance when we pass it to the form, and then form is valid. It's going to check it. And what else do we need to do here? So
does the student object PK equals student need to be student ID on line 40?
I think you could do it both ways. So PK is a predefined. It just stands for primary key. Are you talking about right here? Sorry, right there.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, sorry, thanks. Yeah, but I think you could also pass in ID here instead of PK. I think that's kosher. But yeah, sorry, I had that typo. So thanks for catching that. Okay, so we are updating a student. We find the student, pass it as their instance to our form, do the same check, and I think everything else is pretty much the same. Okay, and what else? Let's I think that's all. Let's try updating one of our students. So we have Mickey, we have Minnie. What's going on here? You good? Yep, all right, server's good. Let's try updating a student. So I'm going to create a new request. Let me save this one. All right, new request. This will be a post. We'll call this update students. And this one probably needs a better name. So we'll call this create student. All right, new student and update student. What else do we want to do here? So it's going to be very similar to our student data. Copy that, go to update student body, raw, JSON. Okay, let's update Mickey Mouse. Let's say he was actually in 10th grade, not 9th grade. So this is student 2. So if I go back to my student details, let me do student 2. All right, notice we have grade 9 right now for Mickey. If we update successfully, the grade should update to 10. So let's give that a go. URL is empty. Yeah, that would be a problem. So this URL that we're posting to is not new, but it's actually student 2 and update. I think it was our path. Or was it edit? I think it was update. All right, there we go. So notice that grade equals 10. So if we do our student detail, it should match that data. So currently it's 9 because that was our last request. If I hit send, all right, there we go. Grade was updated to 10. So it looks like our updating seems to be working correctly. The last thing we need to do is a delete. And luckily delete isn't anything too complicated. We just got to remove it from our data. So to do that, let's go back to our views. Student delete, we're going to get a student ID that we want to delete. Student ID. And then what do we want to do here? It needs to be a post. So I'm going to copy code to save time. So this should be a post. We want to grab a student. And then let's just wrap it in a try accept for good measure. Okay, so student, we get the student and we just want to delete it, right? So we do student.delete, should take care of that. And then let's return a friendly message saying you deleted something successfully. So we'll say student has been deleted and status should be 200 in that case. Okay, I think that's all we need to do if we don't have any typos, that is. We grab a student, delete it, return. Yeah, let's give that a try. So the bad thing is when in the debugger, anytime you reload, you get this weird error. You can ignore that. The server should be good. Yep, server's good. All right, let's delete Mickey from our database. Maybe he got expelled for, I don't know, he's a troublemaker, I think. So let's do a new request. New request. Let's name this delete student. And URL should be similar to update, but it's going to be delete. And yeah, we don't need anything in the body. So I think that's all we need. Let's save this. That needs to be a post though. Save that and let's send. All right, notice student has been deleted. Let's try deleting a student that doesn't exist. So student 3. Let's try deleting a student that doesn't exist. Here we go. We have student, oh, student has invalid fields. I meant to change that. Student doesn't exist. Okay, so, yep. All right, so we try to do that. We should get student doesn't exist. There we go. Student does not exist, or doesn't exist, because student 3 doesn't exist. If we go back to list all students, because we never tried this, but we got an error. So name error. Name student is not defined. Did I mess up my code somewhere? Let's see. I'm trying to list all students. I'm not sure what it's complaining about.
It looks like the error's in your serializer.
That could be correct. I should read my error messages. So yeah, serializer line 7, good catch there. So let's go there, quickly fix it. Serializer, line 7, what's wrong? Students, get students. I had a bad for loop. Surprised that actually worked. All right, let's try that again. Send. Good now. Looks like that worked. All right, so we got Minnie Mouse listed because she's our only student. So we can actually do that in a browser, refresh here, and there we go. We have Minnie Mouse. All right, so it sounds like our CRUD capabilities are set up. We do, we have retrieve, create, update, and delete. So that satisfies that. Yeah, let's take a break, but next we need to do part 2. So part 2 is adding in courses, and then there's gonna be some interaction with courses and students. So that gets maybe a little more challenging, but hopefully a lot of it will be repeated code. All right, so let's take a break. I have 11:31, let's take a 9-minute break. We're probably gonna run into lunch a little bit, but hopefully not too long. All right, so see you guys in a bit. Okay, so we've taken care of release 1, which is we've implemented CRUD capabilities for students. We tested that with Postman, had a few bugs, but we were able to fix those pretty easily. Next, we want to do something very similar for courses. So courses also should have CRUD capabilities. We should have the ability to create, read, update them. But also, there's going to be some interaction with that student model that we created. Obviously, students can be enrolled in classes. And also a class would have multiple students in it. So if you guys are go back to your data modeling time, that will be a many-to-many relationship. So we will need to create some additional code for that potentially. Okay, so let's get to courses. Let's see, views. So one thing, kind of just like thinking about my code, a lot of this code that I wrote for students is actually going to be applicable for courses, right? I'm going to list, detail, and the logic is pretty much the same. So this is where reducing my code will actually make it much easier to kind of add new models. So I'm actually going to do that, even though it's going to take some time up front, it's going to pay off in the long run. So I'm going to do that quickly. So I'm going to create some generic methods, and let's create it in the same file. So I'm going to create generic methods. And I'm going to use my student methods to kind of guide me. So let's just have a method called list, or let's say object list. And all right, so objects. So let's pick out the individual parts. So we're going to need a model. So I'm going to pass that in here. We're going to need a serializer. So let's pass that in here. Model serializer. What else is special about this? I think that's just about it. So if I change these to objects and list the objects. Now this will be model. And this will be model serializer. So this was, again, kind of my...
want to make that first objects?
Right here?
Yeah, object variable.
Gotcha, thank you. You guys are always looking out for me. Objects. Okay, so part of my motivation for creating my serializer in the manner that I did was so that I can make it kind of flexible. And you guys will see that once I get to courses. But yeah, okay, I think this is all I need to change. But yeah, now this is like a generic item. I got to pass some additional data into it, but I can use this for some other model if I need to, and I will definitely leverage that. So yeah, all right, create an object list. Let me actually just call that from here. So this will be object list. So I got to pass that request, but I also had to pass student and student serializer. All right, so my student list method is basically one line. That's great. Student detail, pretty much similar story. So let me copy that. Put that down here without that slash that snuck in. Object detail. All right, so we're going to get an object ID. And this would be object. I'm sure find and replace would be a little more efficient, but I don't think I have too many. So in this case, my error message is going to become more generic, but let's just say item not found. That's probably one downside of making this generic. I could still customize this with an input parameter, but I don't want to make this too complex. So item not found, student objects, this needs to be, okay, calm down there. This needs to be objects or model. This will be model serializer. I think I forgot my, let's see here. Okay, so model serializer, get object, serialize objects. That all looks good except for this guy. Okay, so we're passing an object ID. We need to pass in the same values here. Okay, I think this has become generic. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. But yeah, okay, that seems good to me. So let's just replace this. All this can become return object detail for requests. Student is our model. Nope. Right, these tooltips kind of get annoying at some point. And we got to pass in a student ID. All right, so again, one line looks much cleaner. Now let's get to our new method. Again, pretty easy to make generic, so I'll copy all of this. Go down to our generic level. Students will be objects. All right, so let's hopefully do this correctly. That's generic. We need a student form, so it's going to be, let's just call it model form. We're going to need a serializer still, so let's call that model serializer. And I think that's all we need in here. Yeah, I don't think we need a student model in here. I don't see a place for it, so it should be two things we need to replace: model form and model serializer. All right, so you guys kind of get the idea. Again, just making this generic so that I could actually use these exact methods for courses, because it's doing the exact same logic. The only difference are the types that are being passed in. Okay, I think I got all the places. I don't think I see student in here, but you guys have better eyes than I do. So let's invalid fields. Okay, so just to be clear, like if I wanted to make this specialized, I could pass in like a string that says student, and I can substitute that into my actual error message, but that I'm not up for that right now, but that's probably a good idea for a refactor. Okay, I think I got that. I don't think I'm missing anything. If I am, I'll catch it later. Student update. So this, if you guys remember, is very similar to creating a new student. So I'm actually going to combine that further. I don't think I need these here anymore. All right, so what's the difference between object new and object update? The only difference is I have an instance in this case, right? So let's fix that. Let's just say process object form maybe. And this will take in all this good stuff. And additionally, it will take in an object ID, but that's optional. So in this case, we're going to have a default value of none. All right, so this can now just call return process. All right, let's return process object form. Requests model form, model serializer. And in this case, we're not passing an object ID because we're creating a new object. But in our update case, we're going to take all this good stuff. We got to account for this case, because in this case, we pass in a particular student ID, or in this case, it'll be an object ID. So let's, sorry, let me copy all this. Drop it in here and modify this. All right, so we have that model. So this is, again, this will only be used if we have a student valid object ID. So we'll do an if object ID. Let's see. Set object equals none. If the object ID, we want to grab objects. All right, so maybe object's not the best word because it can be confusing, but it's generic enough. So object equal model objects that's object ID. A lot of copy and pasting going on here. Okay, that looks good. Good. Objects, serialized objects. Sorry, this is a bit tedious. Maybe should have done this ahead of time to save time, but you guys get the idea. Just condensing code so we can reuse it with any particular objects. All right, hopefully I got all that I needed. Okay, anyone see a student left over? I think I got them all.
I think
Okay.
you need to import or add model as an argument too, parameter.
Yes, good catch. Okay, so I guess we probably want to pass model in here. Okay, we'll just pass a model here. We have a default parameter, but that's okay. So okay, so this will call the same thing. The only difference is it's going to pass in a student ID or object ID in this case. All right, there we go. We reduced our redundant code and made it generic enough that we could reuse it. I just gotta make sure I pass in the correct things. Okay, so update will look like that. We need to pass in model. So let's go back up here. Student new will now just return objects new. This will be request student form, student serializer, and I think that's all we need to pass. And this all will be condensed to objects updates. I guess, we just call process form here. I don't know why I'm going through an intermediary. So is it objects process object form? All right, so yeah, I don't need those intermediaries. Apologies there. And this will take in object ID, student ID. Okay, so process object form again, just does the same thing, just depends on if we pass the object ID or not. So we get rid of that. That's all hopefully good. And then we gotta just do delete. So delete is simple enough. We'll return object delete. And this will take in a request model and object ID. Okay, let's quickly create that. So that'll be def object delete. That takes in a request, model, and object ID. Okay, model. I think that should cover it. All right, so sorry that took a few moments, but hopefully we'll save time later. But yeah, so let's actually work on courses now. Maybe we should test this quickly and make sure we haven't broke anything. So let's give it a quick test. Run. Do your thing. Syntax error 65, 64. Colon. All right, server's good. Let's quickly test. So still work? Yep, still seems to work. Let's do a quick new student. We had Mickey Mouse. Let's insert Mickey Mouse back. Bad request. What happened, Mickey? Bad request. So we hit that. Let's go through this. Send. Step. All right, data looks good. Instance should be none. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so serializer failed. So serializer's failing, get student. We can't use student ID because we haven't saved it. No, that should be fine, we save it. So yeah, not sure what's going on here. Let's try that one more time. All right, to make it to get, let's put a breakpoint in get. And it never gets there. That's interesting. That's right. Form, serializer. So that's model, form, and serializer for student new. Is that correct? Model, form, serializer. Yeah, that looks all correct. So I'm not sure what's going wrong here. Model, serializer. Oh, I'm not, I forgot my parentheses. That's a dough moment. All right. So again, I wasn't invoking, actually creating the object that I was passing in. I was just being silly. So, okay, we hit our serializer. Looks like we got return. All right, so Mickey has been created. So let's actually go back to our list page, verify that. Apparently we did that a bunch of times. It looks like we saved it, but we didn't return the correct item. So we probably want to delete ID 4, 5, and 6. So let's actually test our delete. So we have item 4 that we want to say goodbye to. All right, item deleted. Item 5. Let's try deleting item 5 again. Notice we get item doesn't exist. That looks correct. And okay, looks like that's working. I'm going to assume update's working correctly, but if not, we'll fix it later. Okay, so we reduced our code. That was, I guess, maybe 15 minutes there. But okay, so now we're in a position where we could actually adopt the shared data. And the whole reason, again, I did my serializer the way I did was because these are generic enough. I think when we created serializers yesterday, we did like wines all and wine. But in this case, my methods are generic so that if I create a course serializer, they will have the same methods. And that makes it, I guess, flexible enough where I could have those generic methods in my views. And I could just pass it a model serializer. And so long as that model serializer has a get method, it's not going to care what type of serializer it is, right? So that's the idea of polymorphism, where this is flexible enough that it can be anything so long as it has a get method and returns what we expect. That's all that Python's going to care about in this case. Okay, so let's go about creating our course model, and then we'll break for lunch. So I don't want to run into your lunch too much. But okay, let's quickly create our course items. So I'm going to create a model called course. That'll be models.model. Let's just keep it simple. So the course will have a name, just like a student will. Let's just say description. That would be 256. And I guess we could have an instructor, but in this case, we're not creating an instructor model, so I'm going to leave that off. Let's just have a name and description. But the key thing is courses have students. And that's going to be a models to many field. All right, so again, one course can have many students. Likewise, one student can be in many courses. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. All right, let's stop our debugger because it's going to complain. All right, see you later. All right, so we have that many-to-many field. We could create an intermediary table because this is, again, a many-to-many relationship. But in this case, we don't need to do that in Django, especially if we don't need additional values in that many-to-many relationship. So, you know, if this were like a student and course relationship, we'd have an enrollment, and likely the student would have like a grade for that particular course. So if we did want to create that, we definitely need a join table or a join model. But in this case, I'm going to leave the enrollment off and just keep it a little simpler. All right, so we have a many-to-many relationship like that. We need, let's see, students, and we need related names would be courses, and what else? Blank. Yeah, blank. True. So we don't have specified students for a course. True. All right. All right. So courses looks like that. Let's update our migrations. Here. All right. So we do Python manage make migrations. Okay. Seems like that's not an issue. Let's migrate. Okay, that seemed to work fine. So our database is updated. That's step one. Step two, I'm just going to have to create some serializers for it, or one serializer for the course. We already have our student one. So this should be very similar. I'm going to call it course. Let's do some replacing here. Courses, courses, course, courses, courses. All right, a whole bunch of replacing here. Okay, that looks good to me. Let's make this course. And there's going to be one additional step we need to do because now we have that many-to-many relationship. So we're going to kind of want to think about how we handle that. Student, we don't have grades. All right, so for courses, we have a name, we have a description. And this is the additional part. We have students in here, right? And that's going to be a list of students. So, not fun facts, description, course ID, name, and students. And that should be course. All right, so we might have potentially a bunch of students in here when we need to serialize all those students. But we already have a student serializer, so we could kind of take advantage of that, right? So for all the students that we have here, we could call the serializer for students, and that should do the trick for us. All right, so let's think about how we want to do that. So I guess in this case, we want a for loop, student in courses, course students. What do we want to do here? We want to call the serializer. So serialized course. And then we want to populate this list. So we want to grab the students field. And that's going to be our list. We're going to append to it. And then we're going to simply append a student serializer dot get and student. Right? I guess instead of creating this serializer over and over, we could just create an instance of it. So let's do that. Student serializer. All right, that's just a performance thing. Like you don't want to keep creating an object over and over. If you just need one instance, that can do the job for you. So create an instance of it and then call get for each particular student. Again, this is another reason why I don't want my student serializer to take in a value right away. I want a method that can take the value in, and I could basically leverage that serializer multiple times. All right, so I go through my students list in my courses. Sorry, in my course, I have a bunch of students. Go through each student and serialize each student and append it to my list. So this list should have a bunch of serialized students in it, and that should be JSON approved. And then I want to return it. So yeah, I think that should take care of our serialization. We should definitely test it, but that's that. Let's go to our forms quickly. Forms, this should be straightforward. Copy, paste, include that. Any questions? I know I'm going a little fast, but for the most part, it's a lot of copy and pasting. And not too much exciting news. So description. And what else do we have? We had students. Main description of students. Okay. I think that looks good to me. We need to add routes. That's one thing we definitely need to do. So I'm going to copy all that we have here. Sorry, I have a beeping truck outside my window. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Oops. Back. There you are. Let's actually try to find a place here. So control find students. Replace that with course. And replace all, isn't it? How do you selection? Selection? Nope. All right. What's it called? Nope. How do I do find in the selection? Anyone remember? Okay. Replace all. There we go. All right. So I got course ID. Course list, course new. All right, that looks good. The only thing else I think I need to do is go to views and copy these methods for my courses. All right, since we have those generic views and they can work for any object that is similar enough, again, the only things that need to be similar are the serializer and I guess everything else should be fine also. So let's do a quick find and replace for student list. So these are courses. All right, so find and replace should hopefully do this for us. Find, selection, case, and course. All right, replace all, and then we got to do the capital case. All right, I know this is not glamorous coding. I apologize. Kind of boring, but a lot of copy and pasting. But now we replace those. We have these methods for our courses. We have, excuse me, the routes form, which look pretty much similar to our students, except base is different. And I think our view should be good, right? Because we made these generic enough where we just got to pass in the correct items. So in this case, instead of a student model, we pass in course, likewise course form and course serializer. Again, course serializer has those get methods, which exist on both serializer types. So this should work, but obviously we do want to test. So let's quickly get a test running. Is our server going to be okay with this? Let's find out. Let's run with debugging. Syntax error on line 21. What went wrong here? Comma. Continue. Okay, server seems good. So it seems like the changes we made should be good, but we got to test the logic. So refresh here. All right, these are our students. We want to go to courses. So courses. One right here. So object place course. All right, not sure what went wrong here. Line 33 of course list. Line 33 of course list. That should be fine. Did I not import the model? Course and course form and course serializer. Apologies there. All right. I think that was the issue. Let's try that again. All right, there we go. So sorry, I forgot to include my new objects that I created. So we have no courses. That's what we expect. Let's use Postman quickly. So I'm just going to adapt these items. I won't save the changes. So this should be courses, course detail. Let's make a new course. So Fine, I'll copy this. Duplicate and rename. So new course. The fields are a little different between a course and a student, so we need to make up for that. So this will be description. And name of this course will be Cartoons 101. Description will be how to act like a cartoon character. We don't have a grade, but we do have students. All right, so students in this case, let's just make that an empty list for now. We'll see how we could maybe add students in after that, but let's see if we could actually save this. So I'm going to a different path. I want to go to courses, new.
You have a typo on line 2 or line 3.
Description. So that was it?
Yep.
Thank you. Courses new. Okay, I think this is all we need. Let's try sending this and hopefully it doesn't blow up in our face. Okay, bad requests, not good. Students, let's debug this. Always go to debug. So let's go to our views. We got a bad request, which is down here when we were trying to process a form. Let's check out what's going. So I'm going to send this again and step through it. So this looks good. All right, so it looks like probably our serializer is failing. So let's get into our serializer. So it might be the way I'm doing the student serialization, but let's actually find out. Okay, so we got into our get method for our course serializer. Let's step through. Okay, we got an error there. What's wrong here? Course.students. Course. All right, course objects doesn't seem to have students in it. Students here. Okay, so the issue here, my apologies, I need a .all here. This is a query set, not just a straightforward list. So let's reload that. Okay, let's try this one more time, hopefully. Continue. Okay, that worked well. So I forgot my .all, apologies. My query set knowledge isn't as good as it should be. All right, so that posted. Let's see if that added. There we go. We added it 4 times because then we're getting the error after we were saving the object to our database. We're getting an error with the serialization. So we've actually added that course 4 times. Not ideal, but luckily we can actually delete it. So let's create our delete test and delete some of those items out of there. So I want to name this delete course. And this is going to go to courses. And so I assume the IDs were 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's delete 2. Delete. Oop, what am I on now? Courses. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I forgot an S. So courses item has been deleted. Let's try deleting 3 and 4. Okay, let's see if that actually happened. Yep, there we go. We're down to 1 course. That looks fine. All right, so let's actually try to insert some students here, and then that'll be the last thing we do before we take our lunch break. All right, so what if I actually wanted to add a student? So we have some students in our database. Let's actually show them here. I think we have 2. We added Nikki back. All right, so we have ID 1 and ID 3 as our students. So how can we actually get these into our course objects? So courses takes, where is it? Course, a list of students. So let's see if we just pass in an ID. Will that work for our needs? Let's see. Okay, so we added student 1 here. Let's see if that actually updated our course. All right, there we go. So we just passed in the primary key for our student, and then the serializer took care of providing the rest. So in this case, we have our students array, and this has 1 student in it. But let's say we wanted to enroll Mickey. We will want to do an update. So let's actually test our update, since that's actually what I want to do. So sorry, I just created a new course, and my bad. Yeah, so this is the new course. Let's actually update course 5 and add a new student. So sorry for the duplicate course name. But let's do update course. Let me copy this, duplicate it, and edit that. So this will be update course. And let's copy new course. All right, update course, go to the body, make this raw, JSON. Okay, so this is gonna be exactly the same request, but it'll actually update, not create. And let's pass in ID 3, which is Mickey's ID. And let's see what happens. Send. All right, my bad. All right, so we gotta actually send it somewhere. So that'll be 5, there should be a post. And I believe we had ID 5, right? Yep, ID 5 for our course. So we're updating it to have Minnie and Mickey. And everything else is the same. This is a post. Let's post that.
The URL has students instead of courses.
Thank you. You guys are sharp. All right, so courses, 5 update. There we go. So we got our response back. It's easier to see it over here. But yep, so we got Mickey added to our course. So that's how we're dealing with many-to-many relationships, and we're actually having our serializers kind of talk to one another. So that was something we didn't quite go over yesterday, but hopefully you guys were maybe able to figure out that connection where you can leverage the student serializer and use that in your course serializer. Now, one food for thought, we're gonna take a break. We're not gonna continue on, I promise, but what if I wanna have courses listed for my students? It's gonna be very similar, but there's one little caveat to that. If you guys remember with Python, there's no concept of hoisting. Hoisting is something you could do in JavaScript, but I can't use course serializer in my student serializer class because course serializer is actually defined after my student serializer. So if I did want to leverage that, there's a way to do it, but it's a little non-trivial. I guess it's trivial, but it's non-intuitive, perhaps. So I'll let you guys think about that, and then let's break for lunch, and let's regather. So let me stop recording here. All right, guys. So just proceeding in our school API challenge, we've taken care of creating our student model and creating all the CRUD capabilities. And we've created our courses model or course model, and then also have created the CRUD capabilities, as well as handled this bullet point over here regarding the ability to see the students that are currently enrolled in a course. So we don't have too much data, but if we go to our courses, we could list all the students in Cartoons 101. I actually renamed this. So it's Acting 102. We have 2 students in there. Cartoons 101 has no currently enrolled students, but we could definitely change that. So I guess I left you guys with a food for thought item before lunch. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing of a question that I asked, but the bullet point here that I've highlighted, we want to have the ability to see all of us particular students' courses that they're enrolled in. Does anyone have an idea how we can go about doing this? Go back to my coding window. Don't want this. Any ideas out there? All right, so if we go back to our model, so this many-to-many relationship actually kind of magically creates a field for us on our student objects. So this related name, this courses field is kind of an imaginary field, but is totally accessible from our student object. So if we wanted to do, if we had a student instance and we called student.courses on that instance, we would be able to get a list of all the courses that that student's enrolled in. So to see this, let's actually make some updates. Let's actually enroll Minnie Mouse into Cartoons 101. Mickey can only be enrolled in Acting 102. So I'm going to go back to my Postman. I've updated my names of my commands, just my requests, so I could better organize them. So I want to go to course. Let's go to course update. We want to update course 1, which is Cartoons 101. One thing to mention, we've talked about patch, but we've never really used it. Patch, again, the idea of patch is the ability to update one particular field without having to specify all fields. In this case, I do have to like rewrite Cartoons 101 and whatever the description I had. I forgot what I had actually, so how to act like a cartoon character. But yeah, if we were using patch and actually implemented that, that would make this slightly easier because we wouldn't have to specify all the fields if we want to just change one of them. That's where patch would come into play, but we've not implemented that, so can't really take advantage of that. All right, so let me save this. Again, 1 corresponds to Minnie Mouse. That's Minnie Mouse's student ID. So I send that. All right, that seems to update correctly. Let's refresh here. All right, so it looks like this is sorting based on update time. So this class got pushed to the bottom and Minnie Mouse is enrolled in there. Okay, so let's try inspecting Minnie Mouse's courses. If I go to my student tab, notice that we don't have courses listed here as an attribute. So let's actually add that and see what happens. So to do that, I'm going to go to my serializers. And I need to add in courses here. So let's not forget my comma. We'll do courses. And this is going to be some list, right? Now, as we saw with my course serializer, I was able to leverage my student serializer and use that to basically collect all information about my students. So I'm going to do the same thing with my student serializer. I'm going to use my course serializer. So yeah, let's try going about doing that. So in this case, I'm going to create an instance of course serializer. Okay, and then I'm going to do a for loop over the courses. So course in students dot courses, and this time I won't forget my dot all. Okay, and then I want to loop through there and then basically append to this list. So this list is nested within my serialized student dictionary that I'm creating here. So we do courses dot append because it's a list, and we'll append course serializer dot get and the course. All right. Again, same thing that we did for our course object that had have students in them. We're doing the same thing, appending the serialized student in that case. In this case, we want to append the serialized course. All right. So let's save that and see what our terminal says. All right. So we got an error. And let's see. Okay, that seemed to work fine. I'm actually surprised that worked fine, but let's see if that works. Okay, so let's go to student update. All right, so we want to add the new field in here. So we'll do list all. Let's try listing all and see what happens. So sending requests. All right, we got an error. Why did we get an error? This is quite a lot to take in. All right, this goes on forever. Yeah, let's just try this a different way. So I'm going to run my server from here. Do Python manage.py run server. Probably gonna get the same error. All right, so we got an error, and we got a recursion depth. So I think I screwed my serializer up. Apologies there. Ah, okay. So that's the issue here. So the problem here is we're calling course serializer, and that's going to be that's going to call this. So it's basically an infinite loop. So that's actually my bad there. But yeah, we still want to be able to do this in some particular manner. So let's kind of think about this. So I guess one way we could do this, if we don't want to use the course serializer, we could just basically hard code this here, and maybe that's probably the easier way to go. I guess I didn't think this through fully, but let's just append some data here. So we have access to the course. So the course can give us, let's see, an ID and course ID. Okay, so this is one way we can do it. Again, it's not the best way because we definitely want to reuse what we have here. So yeah, I'm actually gonna go back to what I had before. I think I have an idea. So course serializer, I'm gonna pass in a variable here. It's gonna be false. And here we will say serialize students. And the default value will be true. So now these names are very similar, so it's going to get me confused, but let's just say handle students. And in this case, I will, let's see, take this out of here. And then handle students. If that's true, we'll actually serialize our students. All right, we need to have that field. That should work. Okay, so now we're conditionally handling students, so we don't get into that infinite loop, which I ran into. So again, we're still using the course serializer here, but this parameter of false is going to say exclude the students, because otherwise we're just going to get a list of students, and then they're going to have courses, and those courses are going to have students, and then those students are going to have courses. It's going to go, on and on and on. So yeah, let's see if that gets us what we want. Refresh. Okay, there we go. So now we have courses here. So notice that Minnie is enrolled in Acting 102 and Cartoons 101. However, Mickey's only enrolled in Acting 102. So a little slightly tricky there. Again, I didn't quite think of that infinite loop that we're running into. Hopefully that was understandable where, again, I was calling course serializer, which calls student serializer, which in turn calls course serializer, and just going back and forth. So I kind of just circumvented that by having this Boolean here. Any questions? I know before lunch we didn't really pause for questions. So anything on your mind regarding serializers, kind of what we're doing. Also, kind of just understanding how we made this generic. So again, that was some investment up front, but it made adding like a new object being our course very easy. And then if we think about this, like hypothetically, if we want to add instructors, it's going to be all that much easier because for instructors, we just had to add a model, serializer, form. Again, the form's pretty simple. Serializer takes a little bit of effort. Model isn't too much effort. And then these route handlers are just the same. I could call object list, object detail, and pretty easily get instructors in here, all because we've used this generic methods. Questions? What questions do you guys have about what we've done so far? So I'm actually surprised, honestly. I thought on line 18 that I would not be able to reference course serializer because that's defined here, but I guess it's all because I'm calling it at a different point. Good to know. All right, let's go back to our README then. All right, so I think we've accomplished this bullet point of see all of a student's current courses. Again, the many-to-many relationship basically allowed us to have access to that, and we just had to make sure our serializer was capable of handling that case. All right, so part 3 is deploying it to Heroku. So I'm going to give this a try. I was running into an issue earlier when I was trying it. So yeah, let's give it a try. There's a helicopter flying by my apartment. Okay, so again, we've checked off these two. Hopefully you guys are good with that. Again, any questions, please ask. We'd love to hear your questions. But yeah, let's try to deploy it to Heroku, and we'll follow some steps. Again, we kind of went through this yesterday, but again, there's a lot of steps, easy to forget. And again, I often forget too, so it's not like I've memorized all this, but we'll just go and try to add it to Heroku. So I've already created a Heroku account, so that part's checked off. Let's use our command line and get this to Heroku. So first thing I'm going to do is log into Heroku from my command line. So I've installed it via brew install Heroku, Heroku login and -i. I'm actually not sure what this -i does. I just have it in my notes. So basically, my email is that. I guess you guys can see my password length. If I remember it. All right, cool. So I'm logged in. That's great. Next, I want to create my Heroku app. So I'm going to name it Heroku, and then what do I need to create? Now let's give this a name. So I'm going to name it Platoon November. What is this? School API. You have to use alphanumeric and dashes. You can't use underscores. I think I tried doing that before, and it yelled at me. So this is my project name, and yeah, I'll give that a go. Heroku's going to do its thing. All right, that seemed to work well. A few more things we need to do. We need to install Unicorn or G-Unicorn. Pip install G-Unicorn. Okay, and then pip install Django Heroku. Okay, so a few steps here. One last thing we need to do is create a prop file. So this is something that Tom went over yesterday. Just go over that one more time. So I'm going to create a file. It has to be on the same level as manage.py. So I'm going to create on my base level. It has to be named prop file, so you don't have liberties here. No file extension, just prop file. Capital P. So again, the naming really matters here. So capital P and then prop file, no extension. In here, we want to add a line of web:/G-Unicorn. And then our project name. So my project is named School Proj. And then what else do I need to do here? Web server gateway interface. I think that's what I need. Let me double check my notes. Yep. So WSGI stands for web server gateway interface, I believe. But I'm just going to save this. My prop file. Spell check is complaining, but I think it's typed correctly. Okay, so we created that prop file. One more thing that we have to do is go to our settings file. We have to include Django Heroku. We import that. And then at the very bottom, I'm not sure why it has to be at the bottom, but directions say we want to add Django Heroku, what is it, settings and local. All right, so those are two pieces that are required. And then we need to freeze the requirements. We'll do pip freeze, freeze requirements .txt. Okay, so a lot of steps there. I've written them down because, again, I'm not going to memorize this. I don't do it often enough where it'll be second nature. But all right, so we froze that, create a requirements.txt. Now we can actually deploy this to Heroku. So I'm going to do Heroku, run Python manage .py migrate. That'll work. Oops, I have a typo. Come back. Okay, so looks like I still forgot a step here, so I think I need to actually deploy my Heroku or send my Heroku files over. So that's where I need to use Git. So let's go back to the docs and swap Heroku Git. One with Heroku. So it looks like I probably need to create a Git repository. So I think there's a good page for it. Let's find it somewhere. Let's go to my personal apps. Takes a bit of time. All right, so that's the app I created, blah CP November School API, deploy. All right, so I did the login. I need to git init and do this stuff. So let's do that. So git init, git. All right, just copy and pasting from their documentation. All right, seems like that's set up. And then we could push all our files. So git add, git commit, git push, Heroku master. So let's do that. Git add dot. Okay, git commit. Comment. Okay, a lot of files there. I think one thing I definitely forgot was adding my git ignore. It's bad on me. So git ignore. Definitely don't want to upload all these items. That should be out here. All right, so git ignore. Let's see. I don't want my virtual folder in there. Kicked. My VS Code folder can also be excluded from the party. And PyCache. We don't want those. Okay, so it looks like it added stuff that I didn't want. So how do I git revert? I know their git skills. It's a bit complicated. All right, so I did git commit, something terribly misguided. Reset. Yes. All right, I'm a little scared, but I'm going to follow their direction. Seems like there's a lot of votes for this. So let's give it a try. Reset. And then I got to do that again. Sure. Okay. Git add. Git commit. Okay, hopefully it didn't include stuff. Yep, that looks much more reasonable. And then git was the last step. That. All right, I want to do git push Heroku master. So git push Heroku master. All right, it's doing its thing. Taking its time. But yeah, after that, that should be our last step. So we've got our Heroku project created. We're sending our files over there, and then we get our server running there. All right, it's still going, but as you saw, I created my project from my command line, so that's really convenient. I didn't have to go to the website. And this is, I have my own Git repository. So again, the other option is to connect it to GitHub. So it's all based on how your workflow works, like what you prefer for your workflow. You can have a Git pointing to your GitHub and then a Git pointing to your Heroku, and then basically treat those as your branches, as in when you're ready to deploy, you just commit to your Heroku connection. If you are just kind of like uploading changes and like testing stuff, you would just upload those to GitHub. And then keep those separate. So you had to do 2 commits. The alternative is you could kind of link your Heroku to your GitHub so that whenever you push to GitHub, Heroku will pull down the changes And so basically you only had to do one commit. Obviously the drawback there is you need to maintain your branches yourself. As I think Chris talked about yesterday, you want to have like a feature branch where you actually implement your new changes and test them out. And when you're ready to commit, you commit them to your master. And then Heroku would pick up those changes. So again, it comes down to user preference or developer preference, whether you want to have 2 separate commits that you got to do, or just have one commit and have it all work. All right, looks like I got some errors here. That's something I will deal with on my own. Yeah, not sure what's going on there, but overall, was able to create my project. I don't know what, I might have screwed up my Git with all the reverting that I did. All right, apologies there. Any questions on what we've done with School API? Were you guys able to figure out the nesting of objects and handle that with the serializers? I'll take that as a maybe. All right. All right, if there's no other questions, let's take a quick break and then we'll get into Django REST framework, which again isn't a lot of information, but it is valuable information. So definitely want to go over that. So let's take a 5-minute break, be back by 1:50, and we'll get into the Django REST framework.